He's the guy, okay, that has supposedly been connected with the death of Tupac. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. He's been charged with the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. Look at that right there. Okay? And these are the sheriff people. But let's get a closer look on this guy. Okay? Here we go. Why was he charged? Well, before that, all right, let's go back to where the story started out. Let's go back to some of the rumors and then get to where we're at now. And I know if you're old enough, you heard some of these rumors, but it all started when Biggie Smalls' murder case was reopened by his mother in 2006. This is Biggie Smalls' mother. So his mother, Violetta Wallace, she sued the LAPD for an estimated sum of $500 million. And this was based on the conspiracy theory that the police covered up the death of her son. This is Biggie. The case was consequently reopened in 2006 and handed to LAPD detective Greg Carding, who discovered more than what he was hoping for. So he found something more. So Keating believes the murders of Tupac and Biggie Smalls were related. So think about this now. We just got the associate killer of Tupac. So maybe he knows something about the killing of Biggie. So the first thing to note is that Detective Carding claims the deaths of the Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac were related. While investigating Biggie's death, he discovered new information linking both cases. Now we're going back to the guy in the dark sunglasses. Let me see if I get my pictures here. This guy, you know him, you love him, you just can't get enough of him. He's been around, man, for decades. Biggie. We know that Biggie, even back then, we always assumed, if you were around then, that Biggie had something to do with the murders. Because every video, he was always in every video. He was a great promoter. He's like the Donald Trump of rap producers. So he was always involved in something. But some people thought back then that Puff Daddy hired hitmen to kill Tupac. So based on 3 years of working on the case, the detective came to the conclusion that Sean Puff Daddy Combs put a $1 million hit on both Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight, following a highly publicized rap beef involving himself and Biggie. So the cop claims the music mogul had close ties in LA, gang ties, and he hired Crip mentor Dwayne Keefe D to carry out the hit. And that's the guy right here. Okay. So did Puff Daddy hire this guy to kill Tupac? So who already pulled the trigger, or who actually pulled the trigger on Tupac? So this is where the story gets interesting because some of this he does collaborate. So the police claim that Tupac was killed by Crips gang member Orlando Baby Love Anderson, which they say is true. He's the relative of this guy right here. So it says he killed him at the last minute after they unexpectedly pulled up on the wrong side of Tupac's vehicle. So Keffi's nephew carried out the hit instead of killing Tupac and injuring Suge Knight. Wow. Interesting. Baby Lane also got into a fistfight with Pac at a Vegas casino hours before the shooting took place. And if you remember, you might have seen this where Tupac was in Vegas. And Tupac did approach this guy. And they fought. It's all on tape. And the guy said, I'm going to get some revenge. But you think about this. If Tupac hadn't retaliated, maybe Tupac would still be alive. We all know Tupac. We all love him. But he was one. He couldn't hold his feelings. Couldn't hold him. So Biggie Smalls' then wife at the time, and let me see if I can find you guys a picture of her. The wife at the time, they wondered, did she have something to do with it too? Her name is Faith Evans, and she was a singer, songwriter, And back then, she was like really popular. She was married to Biggie Smalls. And boy, you talk about everything's kind of like a soap opera. That's kind of like what it is. So back then in the 90s, rappers, they really were gangsters, east side, west side. Back in my days of doing radio, I kept up with a lot of them. And some of the music was really popular, but they had edges. If somebody said something about a rapper or did something personally, they would talk about them on their next single and it'd go back and forth. So Faith Evans, she was married at the time to Biggie Smalls, and they have asked that she know about Diddy's plot to kill Tupac. After the West Coast rapper was murdered, Keffy, and that's him again, he claims that he contacted Diddy and told Diddy and said Evans will let her know that they were responsible for the death. That's a lot of stuff. Does that mean Biggie was involved in Tupac's murder? That's what people want to know. No, the detective claims that Biggie did not play any part in the murder of Tupac, despite their well-documented rap beef. Wow. He says that Biggie was not aware of Diddy's plan to kill both Shakir and his manager, Suge Knight. After Tupac died, it's alleged that Suge Knight paid a hitman to kill Biggie. Wow. And there's been talk about that too. So after narrowly avoiding death in the murder of Tupac, Death Row Records boss Suge Knight, he allegedly retaliated by hiring a Bloods gang member to kill the notorious B.I.G. Wow. He also claims, the police claim that Knight was Tupac's killer and actually went to the same school as hired hitman Keffy D. So this guy, if this story is true, then he was involved with a lot of stuff. And even if he wasn't the killer, as some have claimed, he's claimed he was. But boy, does he know a lot. So who actually killed Biggie? So Blood member Poochie Faust supposedly killed Biggie after being paid $13,000 by Suge Knight. And according to the police, he attended the same party as Biggie and fired shots at his car as he attempted to leave. Biggie later died on the way to the hospital. The murder case was dropped, interestingly, after the LAPD proved they were not involved in a conspiracy. So they dropped the case. So according to Cardi, the police officer, it was abandoned despite the in-depth investigation because the LAPD were able to beat the $500 million case posed to Biggie's mother. So because they were able to beat the case that the mother tried to sue them for, they decided we're not going to do the investigation. Some people consider Keating a rogue cop. So what happened to the alleged murderers? So Orlando Baby Lane Anderson and Wardell Faust have reportedly died of current unrelated cases. Yes, it's kind of interesting. Supposedly the guy that supposedly killed Tupac, he died a couple years later. So this guy right here, years later, why is he so popular? Why are the cops taking him in? Are we at the end of this, as some people say? I don't think so. And look at this picture. Suge Knight. Some people say he killed Biggie. Some people say Puffy killed Biggie. We know back then that these two guys, Biggie and Suge, very powerful people. He looks like a crime boss. But man, he was a guy that knew how to make money. Really, a guy knew how to make money. Another guy that knows how to make money, P. Diddy. There's Biggie right there. And there is, of course, Tupac. Again, did Puff Daddy have anything to do with this? I don't know, but the talk has been there for a long time. And again, as I clarify this picture right here is a picture of Biggie and Tupac at the Mike Tyson event in Vegas right before Tupac died. But you wonder again, if Tupac hadn't got involved and retaliated, would he still be alive today? And some people say he is alive. So now, again, let's go back to this theory. Why is this guy so popular? Did he do something? go here real quick? Or was he a guy that just knows everything? So the Los Angeles police, they confirmed that Dwayne Davis, aka Taffy D, had something to do with the murder. So they indicted him on charges of murder with use of a deadly weapon in connection with the murder of Tupac. His home in Henderson was searched in July. I think you guys remember that, as part of the investigation into the shooting. So it's been 27 years since the death of Tupac. He was shot multiple times, September 7th, 1996, while leaving a boxing match, as I talked about earlier, and he died 6 days later. So the incident, let's go with that. A day after his death, on September 14, 1996, Shakira was a target of a Las Vegas shooting. As Shakira's entourage was not forthcoming as witnesses, they really didn't want to say. And think about that. They've witnessed this, you think? And was it that, they're in a car and another car comes up. And as that car comes up, Tupac's on the passenger side and they shoot him. So if the car is that close, it makes you wonder, man, there's got to be somebody who saw that in Tupac's car. And if there's 4 people in Tupac's car, and I think 4 in, the other people's car, for all these years they kept everything secret, I guess you don't break the code, even back then. So the police tried to talk to the people in Tupac's car for a while, but nobody wanted to give it up. Police investigated possible gang links and technical retaliation to the murder, and they were looking, wow, into the business dealings of the rap music world. And of course, we know there was a lot of business dealings. That was back then. So the significance of this again, the Nation of Islam, they organized a hip hop day of atonement. And this was very interesting. They thought that Notorious B.I.G. had something to do with this. And nobody wanted to give it up. So as we go back to the police and what they uncovered, they said a grand jury indicted Davis on charges of murder with the use of a deadly weapon in connection to the 1996 killing. But again, if he did not kill Tupac, but we know who did, how's he connected with that? Plus with the shooting. So the chief says, I think the best way to characterize that Dwayne Davis was the shot caller for this group of individuals that committed the crime, and he orchestrated the plan that was carried out to commit the crime. Even if Davis, think about this, was not the one that shot Shakur, under Nevada law, he can still be charged with murder. This is because of the state's aiding and abetting statute, he said. So if you help somebody commit a crime, you can be equally as guilty. So, because people wonder, well, how is he being charged if he didn't shoot Tupac? But if he gave the gun to his cousin, then he's just as guilty. Wow. So again, if you help somebody commit a crime, you can be equally as guilty. Davis is set to appear in court to find out when there's going to be a day for the jury trial. And Johnson said police believe, and that's the police chief, Davis obtained a gun that was used from a close associate, but declined to give any more details, saying they would come out during the trial. Wow. So as we talk about this and continue to talk about this, it gets interesting and interesting. So who is this guy? Who is this Dwayne guy? Who is the guy that supposedly killed Tupac? Well, study this guy because this is the guy that potentially caused the death of Tupac Shakur. So, as the sheriff department said, because people like it's taken all that years, people being frustrated. So the sheriff said many people did not believe the murder of Shakira was important to the police department. I'm here to tell you that was simply not the case. He's been charged again with one count of open murder, use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. So at 60 years old, that's how old this guy is now. He's the last living suspect in this case. Who is this man? Who is this man that caused the death of Tupac Shakur? And you know what? This guy, he's been saying this for years, so we would have known years ago who he was. And why wasn't the police taking him serious? So he was a leader of the Southside Compton Crips when he planned his revenge against Tupac. In 2019, he released a tell-all memoir called Compton Street Legend. So listen to this. In 2019, which is 4 years ago, in the book, he said he had risen up the ranks at the South California notorious gang to become a shot caller and was running a multi-million dollar drug empire nationwide. And when I've heard some of the media say he's a shot caller, they sound funny saying that. I don't know if I do too. Shot caller, rock baller. So anyway, he was running a multi-million dollar drug empire nationwide. Born in Watts, California, him and his family moved to Compton, then a middle-class family-oriented neighborhood for black families. His family and uncle were betting on horses, wow, in Mexico, when Davis's father won $50,000, the equivalent of $1 million today. He wrote in his memoir. So he's writing this. He's telling people what he's doing. With the money, Davis wrote, his parents, his mother, a homemaker from Texas, and his father, a Marine from Virginia, they purchased a house in Compton and two new cars, excited by the promise and possibility of America. When they moved to their block in 65, Davis said, their family was the only black one. Little by little, white families started to move away, like cockroaches fleeing when the lights were turned on, he wrote. One of 17 siblings, he grew up surrounded by family. His mother died from colon cancer in 1980. When Davis was 15, Davis wrote that in 2014 he got the same cancer, now in remission, that killed his mother. Two of his brothers also died, one from cancer, and the other was shot in the streets of Compton. Davis said he first met Death Row Suge Knight when he was 9 years old. He said he started getting involved with the Crips in 71, mostly because it was what all the boys in the neighborhood were doing. He was working in Compton College, but it wasn't really fast enough, he said. He had an opportunity to sell drugs, and he liked how quickly he made money. So Davis wrote that he went to prison for dealing from 85 to 89, and he said his time in prison didn't rehabilitate him, but made him, wow, a hardened gangster. So it didn't do nothing but make him even more want to do bad stuff. So he detailed his conversations with authorities over Shakur's death. Davis was 46 back then and facing federal drug charges, but agreed to speak to them so they would, wow, shred the indictment. So did they? And how was he again allegedly tied to these murders? So three of the men believed to be in a white Cadillac the night of Shakur's shooting have died. Davis is the last living suspect in the case, the police said. On the night of the shooting, Shakur and members of his entourage came to attend the Mike Tyson event. Shakur and Knight saw Davis's nephew, Orlando Anderson, in a hotel. Surveillance footage showed Shakur and Knight beating the nephew, and a fight was stopped by hotel employees. News of the fight got back to Davis, police said, and he started hatching a plan to get revenge. Davis got a firearm from a close associate, police said, and gathered Orlando Anderson, Terrence Brown, and DeAndre Smith to go with them in the infamous white Cadillac ride. Detectives reported on the search warrant collecting multiple computers, 40 caliber bullets, tubs containing photographs, a cell phone, and a hard device. They also took a magazine that featured Shakur and a copy of Compton Street Legend. Wow. So this guy, 4 or 5 years ago, told the police, hey, I had something to do with Tupac's killing. My nephew had something to do with Tupac's killing. Conspiracies around. Okay, so when I raided the house in July, as I put on my reporter investigator hat, think with me. They raided the house in July, his house, and when they raided it, this is interesting. They found computers, they found hard drives, they found phones. So if Tupac was killed in the 90s, are they still keeping the same computers, hard drives, phones? What would they have that would implicate them? Hmm. So how long was this case going on before they, meaning the police said, okay, let's go to that house? What was the pivotal information where they went to that house in July and then they arrest this guy a couple months later? What kind of tip did they get? Is there anybody else that, you know, should be connected with this? Hmm. We can go on and on with this. We can go on and on. Is Tupac alive? Some people say he is. Some people say he's in Canada. Some people say, wow, in Cuba. You look at some of his albums, Machiavelli. Um, he talks about leaving and coming back just like Jesus. Is he like Elvis? Wow. It's an amazing story. Is this guy the last we're going to see? Is Puff Daddy? Is Suge Knight involved? Did the police lay low on this? Why didn't they come after this guy earlier? Well, hopefully this case will close, but we know it's not, so it's going to be an ongoing case. We're going to continue to talk about it because, like I said, I talked about Tupac when he died. Now I'm talking about Tupac with this guy. And he has cancer. And is it in remission? Is he having, he's 60 years old. Is he having a change of heart? What is making him really say, I want to talk now?